Good morning. This is a special edition of Political Paula. 15 years ago today, I lost my mom. I hate that. I hate that term. I didn't lose my mom. When you say you lost someone or lost something, that's kind of your fault. I lost my car keys. I lost my cell phone. I lost my earring. I didn't lose my mother. My mother was stolen from me by a bad doctor and an incompetent hospital staff. That's the way it was. On her death certificate, it says she died from natural causes. There was nothing natural about my mother's death. And if you had been there in the 4 days it took the surgeon and the hospital to kill her, you would have said the same thing. My husband turned to me and said, there ain't nothing natural about this. And by the way, don't ever let anything like this happen to me. Now, 15 years ago, well, I wasn't political Paula back then. I was just a 39-year-old daughter whose mother was killed by incompetence, by a mistake. And it is funny because when you murder somebody, when you kill another human being out here, sometimes, most of the time, the person is caught and they go to trial and the family gets justice. They pay for taking someone from you, someone you love, someone who should be here. But when it's done in a hospital by someone with MD next to their name, well, they don't pay unless you're smart. And at the end of the show, I'm going to give you some things that since I've become political Paula, I've learned. And this isn't something that I stew over anymore. For the first couple years I did. I thought about the way she died every day. And I do think about my mom every day, but I don't always think about the way she was killed. But when I hear of a report on the news, and it usually happens with a celebrity, they died from complications due to surgery. Well, that means someone fucked up. That's what complications from surgery means. It either means they operated on someone they shouldn't have because the person wasn't healthy enough to withstand the anesthesia or the operation itself, or it means during the surgery someone messed up. They did something wrong. And because of that, a human being died. But they get away with it because they have that MD next to their name. They have the big hospital backing them up, lying for them, covering it up. Natural causes. Christina Kling-Wennerstrom was overweight. She smoked 4 cigarettes a day and never inhaled. That must have contributed to her death. No, it didn't. So shut up about that. My mother was so healthy, even though she was overweight. She didn't have high cholesterol, high blood pressure. She was on no prescription drugs. She didn't have diabetes. She didn't have high cholesterol. Nothing. She just had a bad uterus and a hernia, an abdominal hernia, and that was the problem. The hernia doctor showed up, had never met my mother. This is why you need to ask questions. The doctor she had consulted with was busy that day and sent somebody else, and that doctor had no relationship, had never seen my mother until she saw her on the operating table. And instead of tying off a vein to kill the hernia and remove it, this doctor tied off an artery, which caused severe organ failure in my mother. And it took 4 days for her to die. And she died on April 12th. April is the cruelest month. It definitely is for me. And then, of course, there was the brouhaha. Again, I was not political Paula. I wish I had been because things might have been different. I know I would have stood up for myself a little bit better. But there was the family issue. I was her only next of kin. I'm her only daughter. And yet I wasn't given that respect by certain family members of mine. My mother had left the Greek Orthodox Church several months before her death because of the way they treated her after she dared to marry her second husband in a church other than the Greek Orthodox Church. It's a Christian church, Christian marriage. State of Pennsylvania recognized it, but the Greek church did not. So they basically kicked her out. They said, you can't take communion, no sacraments. So she quit paying dues. She did not consider herself a member of the Greek Orthodox Church. Some members of my family didn't agree with that. And even though they knew that my mother had thrown the Greek Orthodox priest, Veronis, out of her own home after her husband died, when he dared to come into her home and say, well, your husband's dead now. You can come on back to church, start paying dues again, take communion. She kicked him out. She didn't want anything to do with this person. And I walk into the ICU, and there's the Greek Orthodox priest standing over my mother's bed. I didn't call him. When she filled out the forms at the hospital, she didn't put Greek Orthodox under the religious affiliation. She put the United Church of Christ, where she was married and where she attended with her husband until his passing the previous September. So the fact that my relatives called this priest specifically and told him to come against my wishes and against my mother's wishes, which is even more important, really made me angry. The only good news was my mother was comatose. She was on a respirator. She was out of it. She didn't know he was there. But I knew. And they knew they did this against my wishes. It was like a huge, fuck you, Paula. We're Greek Orthodox. Your mother is a Greek Orthodox. The priest needs to be here. No, see, that was so wrong. It was wrong. A lot of things were done wrong by my family. Trying to insist my mother have some sort of a Greek Orthodox funeral. She didn't want that. And I refused to do it. But they tried. They got their little digs in whenever they could, singing the fancy little Greek song at the burial. And, you know, basically they did everything they could to override my decisions on my mother's funeral. And that will not be forgotten. I know you're supposed to not live in the past, but I don't forget that. When my mother died, she did not die a Greek Orthodox. She died a Christian. And in my book, there is no difference. Unfortunately, the Greek Orthodox think that they're up here and ordinary Christians are down here somewhere. They think they're better than everybody else. That's why they have special rules that nobody understands, but they follow anyway, because God forbid we get excommunicated. So that was very frustrating for me. You know, they say that, I don't know, have you guys have you guys had somebody die and you're like, you think that the whole world stops? This is interesting for me because what touched me the most after my mother died was not just the loss of her, but seeing the book that she had been reading and that after her surgery she was planning to continue to read. She took it to the hospital with her. And how far she had gotten in that book. And I'm like, wow, she's never going to finish that book. And that made me very sad. And then I came home after she died and I turned on the TV and she loved her soap operas. She loved General Hospital. We watched it together. And General Hospital was on. I'm like, well, how can General Hospital be on? My mother's not here to watch it. I mean, my orders were, while I'm in the hospital, in case I don't get to see it, tape General Hospital for me every day so I don't miss anything. I guess I didn't need to tape it. And then something would happen on General Hospital, like, oh, Mom, I got to call Mom. And, oh, I can't call Mom. Or sometimes I'll have a question. I'm like, oh, I wish I could ask Mom, and I can't ask Mom. And I think the thing that strikes a lot of people when someone dies, especially if they die unexpectedly, is that everything else goes on. Their favorite TV show still airs at the same time every day. The book that they started is still there, but they didn't get to finish it. They don't know how it ends. I read the book my mother started, by the way. It wasn't a book I would normally read, but because she had started it, I kind of thought in my own little girl kind of thing that what happens when your mother dies, no matter how old you are, you become a little girl again. And so I said, well, I'll read the last thing my mother was reading. And maybe somehow, if there is a heaven and she believed in heaven, and I hope she wasn't unpleasantly surprised, I hope she's up there. And I thought, if I read this book, maybe through me somehow, if she is watching over me, she'll get the book. She'll be able to get, because I finished it, she'll know how it ended. Isn't that weird to think about that? At the time my mother died, so many good things were happening. I was finally getting my mom back. And I say that not to be rude, but she had remarried in 2000, and my stepfather was a wonderful person. But he came with baggage, and the baggage was not fun. He had 4 adult children, 2 of them total losers, and a grandchild that was very dependent, always around. My mother didn't sign on for that. They even had to take the 11-year-old grandchild on vacation with them. My mother was complaining about it the entire time. And for those of you, if any of my family members are saying, oh, she was so happy. No, see, she told you she was happy. But every day when I spoke to her, when the husband wasn't around, she told me the truth. It wasn't all roses and unicorns. The 4 adult children were a pain in the ass. And even for me, because I had to deal with them, I would never have welcomed these people into my home or gone to their home. I had nothing in common with them. But because of my mom marrying their dad, I had to compromise. And it was very uncomfortable for me. These were people I would never in a million years have gone out of my way to have a relationship of any kind with, let alone have them into my home. So after my stepfather died in September of 2003, Mom was very sad. She was despondent. But we knew she would come back, especially after we officially got engaged. We set a wedding date for October of 2004. And she was so excited about the wedding. So when these horrible people said she died because she wanted to be with your stepfather, I'm like, fuck you. She had a lot to live for. My stepfather had left her life rights to the house they shared 30 minutes away from us in a place called Quarryville, Pennsylvania. My mother was not a country girl. My stepfather used to shoot out the window to kill groundhogs. My mother wasn't raised like that. And she stayed in the house. She had life rights. His children didn't like that because the house was worth quite a lot of money. And when they got married, because I took over this house, which was my mother's house, he gave her life rights to that house, even if he passed first. And so my step monsters, they celebrated my mother's death. The day of her funeral, they didn't come to the cemetery. We got news from a friend of my mother's who lives in Quarryville that said, you better get somebody down here because they're throwing all your mother's stuff out on the lawn. They're cleaning out the house. They want their money for selling that property. So they were real excited. But when my stepfather died, I thought, wow, this is cool. She won't have to deal with the stepchildren anymore or the step-grandchild. And maybe we can convince her to move back closer to us. Me and Jason, her family, the people she cherished the most. We even at one point thought, maybe we can sell this house and she had some money and we could pool our money together, get a house with in-law quarters. She could live on our property in a separate area. And I was like, well, no, you know what? I think the best thing would be for her to be independent because she had never, like me, she had never lived on her own. She lived with her parents, then my dad, then my grandmother, and then, of course, now her second husband. So I thought it would be good for her to go into a retirement community. All the maintenance, she couldn't shovel snow or mow lawns, but that would be cared for. And there's a lot of great retirement communities close to us. And I thought that would be the ideal situation. So we were hoping to convince her to do that. Because if she had moved in with us, My mother was always a helicopter parent, which we fought about a lot. And I said to my husband, I said, you know what? We're going to have an issue. And this was before texting. God help us if my mother had ever learned to text. Because we'd be like, Mom, we're going out to dinner. And see, that in itself would have been a problem. Because as adults, we shouldn't have to tell anybody where we're going before we go. But if she lived with us, we'd have to go, Mom, we're going out to dinner. 2 hours, she'd be texting, where are you? It's been 2 hours. Did you have to wait in line? It's raining. I can just see it now. You know, we go to a house party and it goes late and we get home at 4 in the morning. Her light will be on. Are you home yet? I couldn't sleep, Sen. I won't go to bed till you let me know you guys are home safe. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Do I need to call the police? I said to Jason, no, I don't think that'll work out. I think we do need our separate, like 5-10 minutes away. Perfect. I don't want to go back to being, you know, the times when she refused to go to church because I stayed out all night on a Saturday. And she was getting ready to call the police. And, of course, the police wouldn't have done anything because I was 27 years old, Mom. But that's the way my mom rolled. She loved me with all her heart, which is why I know she wouldn't purposely have given up the fight for her life. She didn't want to die. She loved my stepfather very much, but she didn't want to jump in the coffin with him. So I do miss my mom every single day. I miss what she's missed. She's missed my show. She's never seen this show. She would have been proud of me. Although I can hear once in a while, maybe a little TMI. You know, she didn't say TMI, but maybe you shouldn't have said that, or did you really have to say that? But I think she would have been very proud. She would have been proud the night a few years ago when I was doing the radio show, and then I went to the event, and someone asked me for my autograph because I had done this magazine. I had written all the articles for it, and someone asked for my autograph, my first ever and last ever autograph. That it was so thrilling for me, and she would have been so proud. She probably would have been there. She would have loved my comedy skits. She would have been there to support me when I did my stand-up. She did miss my official wedding. She knew that Jason and I were going to be together forever and that he was the one, and she loved him. She called him her son. But she didn't see us actually get married, and we never did have the big wedding. I got robbed of that, too, by the people who killed my mother. I never got my princess or queen for the day, but I got my husband, and that's worth it. And it's not all roses and unicorns, but again, he stood by me. He was with me. He threw the Greek priest out of my mother's viewing, which was awesome. My knight in shining armor. Some of the Greek people came up and said, dude, you got more balls than anybody. You are a good guy. We got free drinks at certain places owned by Greeks. We got free legal service from a Greek lawyer. Wow. Yeah, people respected my husband. You know, to get respect, you have to sometimes demand it. I didn't get the respect I deserved when my mother died from certain family members. Not all of them, but some of them. And it really upset me that being Greek Orthodox or kowtowing and bowing down and making sure all the Greeks came up to me and they were introduced to me, even though they didn't stand up for my mother when she was alive, but it was okay to come cry over her dead body. I didn't like that. And I could have put a stop to it. Political Paula would have said, enough. Enough. You weren't there for my mom when she was alive, and the priest was kicking her out of church because she got married somewhere else. Get out. I want people here to memorialize and remember my mother who actually cared about her. Not who just cared about her because of a church she attended. That to me meant nothing, and it meant nothing to my mother at the time of her death. She didn't care about the Greek Orthodox Church. She didn't hang out with the people from the Greek Orthodox Church. She had her own friends, and of course she had us, me and Jason. That's who she hung out with. Now, if I had been political Paula back then, this is my educational part of this memorial show for my mom. When things started going wrong, and they went wrong quickly. They couldn't get her off the respirator after she came out of surgery. That's always a flag, red flag. What I would do today, and what all of you should think about doing, call a lawyer. I should have called a lawyer the second they told me she needed another surgery. When they told me she had the DIC, which is a bleeding disorder, that her kidneys were dying. They put her on kidney dialysis. Then her liver was dying. I should have called a lawyer. And I should have said, what do I do? And now I know what I should have done. Make perfect, pristine notes. And when you're upset and you're making decisions for someone that is life and death, it's hard to do that. But have someone with you that will say, look, write all this down. I should have written down every word the doctor said. I should have said, you put that in writing and gotten copies of every single thing. I should have gotten a list of every medication she was on. If she was on heparin, which would have been life-threatening, she did not need heparin. And I have a feeling at one point she was on it and shouldn't have been. But I should have gotten all my ducks in a row. And at the time of her death, I should have insisted, even if I had to pay for it, on a out of hospital, an independent autopsy to determine the exact cause of her death. Because everything was going wrong. Her kidneys died, her bowels, her liver stopped functioning, and then her bowel died. And then she died on the operating table when they were going to give her a colostomy because the bowel was dead. It wasn't working anymore. So, yes, I should have been getting legal advice the entire time she was in the hospital and insisted on an independent autopsy through the state, not through the hospital, because they protect their own. And it's not about money, because a 68-year-old woman who's getting her retirement benefits, she doesn't get, I would not have gotten millions of dollars in damages for her death, for her murder. It wasn't about the money. It was about having it on the record that that doctor fucked up and killed my mother. And if it turned out that someone in the hospital overdosed her with heparin or did something else wrong, that would be on the record. That's what I wanted. I wanted someone to walk into a courtroom and say, we fucked up. We made a mistake. We're sorry. Now, I have Googled, I'll never forget the hernia doctor's name. And I've Googled her, and I can't find her. So maybe she made another mistake and she got caught this time. Who knows? As far as I know, she's at least not practicing medicine here in Lancaster. Or I spelled her name wrong. It's a weird name. Her name was Dr. Mazurka, and I don't know her first name because she never bothered to tell me. Because she never knew my mother. She never met my mother. She was just there because the original doctor that was supposed to do the hernia surgery, I don't know, never was told why he didn't show up, but he didn't show up. So I can't find her, and so hopefully she's not practicing medicine anymore or killing other people. But here's my thing. When I think about my mom, of course I think what she's missed. But she's also missed a lot of bad stuff. She's missed a lot of the mass shootings that would have horrified her, the tragedies that we've been through as a family, certain family members we've lost that would have broken her heart. So while she missed a lot of the good stuff, she's also been blissfully spared from the tragedies too. But there were so many times over the last 15 years when I really needed my mom. And no one would fill in for that. Nobody is your mom. Just her. And I really wish she would have been there to cry with me, to worry with me, to make me feel validated in my worries. Like when I had the cervical cancer scare. Only your mother will never say to you, you're overreacting. Your mother will cry with you. Your mother will worry with you and worry about you and pray for you like only a mother can. And that was stolen from me. I didn't lose my mom. She was stolen from me. And all I can hope, since April is the cruelest month, since I didn't get a day in court, I didn't get justice for my mom, the doctors who were responsible for her death were never punished, I often think that I hope they don't forget my mom. They don't forget the name Christina Kling Wennerstrom and her daughter, who was looking forward to the big wedding day that her mom and she were going to plan after this, what was supposed to be routine surgery, was done with. My mom had a lot of plans, and I had a lot of plans that I wanted to share with my mother. And they were taken from me, from my husband, and from my mother. And I hope that the doctor or anyone who was involved in, again, Christina Kling Wennerstrom, and I'm Paula Luciano, I hope you remember our names. And I hope that your dreams are cruel. I hope you think about people that you have harmed, people that you've done an oops, and you've gotten away with it. I hope those people are few, rather than many. But I do hope that they haunt your nightmares, like my mother's death haunts mine. I miss you, Mom. Love you always. Political Paula, out.